An RAF base in Scotland is preparing for the landing of a hijacked transatlantic flight. Colonel Drummond is called in to handle the crisis. Upon his arrival, an officer informs him that the pilot and co-pilot are presumed dead. Drummond also learns that at least one passenger is on the German terrorist watch list. In the control center, an officer communicates with the plane, guiding its landing, while another monitors its approach. The plane lands roughly. Drummond requests a visual and radios the plane, asking for an update. Suddenly, movement is spotted near a door, a parachute drops, and a boy climbs out. Drummond orders 2 RAF trucks to retrieve him. Inside the cockpit, a new person appears. Drummond warns him over the radio, instructing him to sit in the pilot's seat and raise his hands, or they will open fire. The man insists he's not a terrorist and asks to explain. Later, Drummond sends a translator to speak with the boy, Elias, who is being examined by a doctor. However, Elias is in shock and unresponsive. The scene flashes back to the day before. In a hotel room, Elias's mother, Nadia, prepares for their flight. She calls her doctor in New York, discussing her treatment. Elias calls Nadia to confirm their luggage is ready. Later, they meet at the airport, pass through security, and wait for their flight. Nadia goes to the bathroom, prepares her medicine, and injects herself. Meanwhile, Elias befriends a man named Farid in the waiting area. Nadia soon joins them, and they board the plane. During the flight, Nadia recalls a memory of her husband, who left to seek help when they were stranded with their baby. Back on the flight, Nadia notices a commotion. 8-Ball confronts a disruptive passenger, but things escalate quickly. One air marshal intervenes, but 8-Ball stabs another marshal, and the passenger overpowers the first. 8-Ball orders his men to find the third air marshal. They kill her, steal her gun. 8-Ball then violently kills the remaining marshal, horrifying one of his accomplices. Nadia senses danger brewing. 8-Ball walks back to the passengers and tells them to remain seated while he flings a gun at them. His accomplices force the passengers to the back of the plane. Meanwhile, Berg heads to the cockpit. When co-pilot Bastian opens the door, Berg reveals he killed the pilot. Together, they shove Bastian into the lower level of the plane. Berg then announces their takeover and orders passengers to keep their hands on the seatbacks in front of them. Yuri, the bearded conspirator, locates the black box and reprograms it. He informs Berg, and the co-pilot adjusts the plane's course. Elias, worried about his mother, checks the plane schematics and advises her on where to avoid sunlight. As the tension escalates, Curtis orders Nadia to move to the front. Carl tries to calm 8-Ball, but Elias escapes his seat, prompting Nadia to follow. 8-Ball chases them and shoots Nadia in front of Elias. Carl restrains the boy and warns him to stay put. Berg confronts 8-Ball, threatening to kill him if he disobeys again, but uses Nadia's death as a warning to the others. Flashback * Nadia, stranded with her baby in a car, waits for her husband, who left to find help. When he doesn't return, she ventures into the woods, discovering an abandoned house. Inside, she finds blood leading to the basement, where a vampire attacks. Nadia fends it off but is bitten before sunlight kills the creature. She finds her husband dead in the basement. Back on the plane, Nadia drops into the cargo hold. Berg forces Farid and 2 others to read a false terrorist statement. Nadia hides under a car, while Curtis and Yuri prepare a bomb. She kills a dog to feed, but its noise alerts Yuri, who she swiftly kills. Farid returns to the cabin and sits beside Elias. Meanwhile, Nadia's vampire transformation accelerates. She prepares her medicine, but hears Berg's countdown for their jump. Drinking Yuri's blood, she enhances her strength and heads back to the cabin. To distract the hijackers, she stages Yuri's death to look like a dog attack. Nadia takes Elias to the cockpit, searching for someone who can fly the plane. A passenger volunteers and joins her, locking the cockpit doors behind them. In the cargo hold, the hijackers prepare for their scuba dive escape as Berg coordinates their ocean pickup. Nadia, still transforming, watches them via security monitors. She tells the volunteer pilot to wait until the hijackers jump before disengaging autopilot. Back in the cabin, 8-Ball realizes Nadia is alive. He and Berg force a passenger to reveal her location and head to the cockpit. When they demand entry, Nadia instructs the pilot to turn the plane toward the U.S. He hesitates but complies under her intimidating presence. Noticing the change in course, Berg threatens to kill a passenger, raising the stakes further. Berg shoots a passenger and warns Nadia they'll keep killing unless she opens the cockpit door. He sends 8-Ball to fetch another victim, and the psychopath drags a little girl to Bird. As Bird begins a countdown, threatening to shoot the child, Nadia bursts out of the cockpit and viciously bites into Bird's neck, horrifying Bastian and the others. The pilot locks the door behind her, keeping Elias safe. After draining Bird's blood, Nadia hunts down the fleeing hijackers. Hearing Berg start to transform, she returns to finish him off. 8-Ball watches her kill Berg, realizing her true nature. Back at the cockpit, Nadia instructs Elias to stay put and enters the lavatory, horrified by how far her transformation has progressed. Meanwhile, 8-Ball retrieves her bag and discovers her notebook. Reading it aloud, he informs the others that Nadia is a vampire. Carl, skeptical, focuses on 8-Ball's increasingly erratic behavior as he shows them a UV light designed to harm her. Nadia injects herself with medicine and slips into another flashback. She struggles to care for baby Elias while suppressing her vampiric urges. In a desperate act, she rips out her fangs to protect him. Later, she revisits the house where she was turned and encounters the father of her sire. The man, tormented by his own nature, shoots her, lamenting that vampires are cursed to bring suffering. On the plane, 8-Ball crafts a wooden stake while the hijackers argue. Carl persuades Bastian that their best chance is to regain control of the cockpit. Despite warnings, Elias exits the cockpit, finds Nadia in the lavatory, and drags her back. The hijackers move to retake the cockpit. Nadia confronts 8-Ball, who burns her with the UV light, causing her to collapse. He orders the others to seize control, staying behind to experiment with her blood. As he prepares to stake her, Elias appears, pointing a gun at him. 8-Ball taunts the boy, that results in a bullet puncturing a window. The cabin depressurizes, sending the plane into chaos. Bastian warns that they have only 10 minutes of oxygen left and must descend. Nadia secures an oxygen mask for Elias, then takes the gun and shoots 8-Ball, who flees. In the cockpit, the volunteer pilot passes out, enabling the hijackers to break in. Nadia brings Elias to the other part of the plane and gives him over to Farid as the plane suddenly loses altitude. She goes after 8-Ball and finds him inside a bulletproof car. She pleads for him to stop as he injects himself with her blood. He begins transforming instantly. Realizing the danger, Nadia douses the car with alcohol, sets it ablaze, and remembers the old vampire's warning. They must not let their evil spread. The plane stabilizes, but the hijackers notice the fire in the hold. Before they can act, Nadia extinguishes it and retreats. As they fire at her, the terrified passengers rush toward the front of the plane, Farid carrying Elias in the chaos. As the hijackers investigate the cargo hold, they find 8-Ball alive in the burning car. He suddenly attacks Curtis, drinking his blood, and then goes after the others. Meanwhile, Nadia secures the hold's door, but Elias yells that the passengers want to kill her. Farid tries to calm the situation, insisting they won't hurt her, but one passenger shoots Nadia. She retaliates, fighting off the attacker, but spares Farid when Elias begs her to stop. Hearing the other vampires stirring, Nadia warns that they must not be allowed back on board. She descends to the hold and confronts 8-Ball. Farid runs to her aid and gets bitten by 8-Ball, who gets shot by the other guy when he pushes through the door. Nadia quickly chops off Farid's hand to prevent the infection from spreading. Curtis, fully turned, tries to break into the plane. Nadia pushes both him and 8-Ball back into the hold, saving a stewardess in the process. She reassures the passengers, with Farid's help, that she's on their side. Returning to the cockpit, Farid and Nadia realize the plane is running low on fuel. Farid urges her to hide in the dark space beneath the cockpit while he coordinates with Bastian. When the pilot contacts a nearby RAF base, he informs them of the hijacking, claiming the hijackers are locked in the hold. Meanwhile, Elias sneaks out to retrieve Nadia's medicine. In the hold, a dying passenger releases 8-Ball, hoping to be bitten. Instead, 8-Ball storms past him, attacking the passengers. Chaos erupts as Nadia and Farid realize they must prevent the plane from landing to keep the vampires contained. Farid proposes landing the plane and detonating it remotely. They prepare to rig the fuel tank, but lack a timer. Nadia volunteers to manually detonate the explosives once everyone else escapes. Elias refuses to leave her and ventures into the hold, armed with a UV light, to find the hijacker's timer. Despite dodging vampires, Elias drops the light during an attack. Nadia sees his peril and prepares to help. She entrusts Elias to Farid and, to fully embrace her vampiric strength, feeds on Bastian, completing her transformation. In the hold, 8-Ball corners Elias, but Nadia intervenes, leading to a brutal fight. 8-Ball bites her, but Elias devises a plan to blow out the hold door. With the cabin destabilized, Farid tilts the plane, exposing 8-Ball to sunlight and killing him. Elias feeds Nadia his blood, reviving her. She resists feeding further, retreating to the hold. At the RAF base, Elias pleads with authorities to save Farid, but they dismiss him as delusional. Sedated, Elias escapes en route to the hospital, determined to save Farid. As soldiers enter the plane, unaware of the lurking vampires, they are ambushed. Farid tries to warn them, but is ignored. Elias arrives, witnessing Nadia feeding on a soldier. Realizing she is beyond saving, he detonates the plane, destroying the vampires and shocking Drummond. In the aftermath, a wounded Farid finds Elias near the wreckage. The two embrace, surviving against all odds.